We often just, throw adjectives into our sentences without much thought, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
But today, we're diving into a report that's completely reframing my understanding. It argues these tiny words are actually fundamental building blocks in the most powerful AI systems we have.
Hmm.
It's a deep dive that promises to transform how you think about choosing words in your prompts.
It really might.
Our mission is to unpack this fascination report: adjective architectures in AI prompts, functionality, failure, and semantic leverage. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding why your AI sometimes gets it perfectly right
And sometimes doesn't.
and sometimes goes totally off the rails.
Yeah, that's spot on. This report fundamentally shifts how we should think about adjectives. It argues that understanding how these words are structured is absolutely essential. We're not talking about decorative flourishes here. They're more like epistemic scaffolds. Essentially, they're the frameworks that build the AI's understanding.
The actual structure.
The very structure upon which meaning is constructed. We'll be exploring their actual functions, how they can lead to failure, and what the report calls their semantic leverage, revealing just how much power these small words truly wield.
Okay, let's unpack that and start with how LLMs actually see adjectives. Because you said it's far more complex than you'd think.
It really is. It's easy to think an adjective like red is just, well, a simple word for an LLM.
Yeah, red means red.
But the report reveals something profound. LLMs don't see red in isolation. They connect it to a vast lexicosemantic network,
A network.
a web of related meanings, like crimson, anger, or maybe even stop sign. It depends on the context it learned from.
Wow.
This means that even a seemingly innocuous adjective can inadvertently activate an entire constellation of concepts within the AI's mind, so to speak.
Okay, and the challenge there is?
Well, the challenge, LLMs learn an adjective's meaning implicitly, just by seeing it in countless text sequences.
It's for pattern matching, basically.
Exactly, which makes precisely studying its impact quite difficult.
Right.
And here's where it gets tricky for us prompters. These sophisticated, dense networks in larger models, while powerful, can also introduce subtle pathways to failure if your prompts aren't incredibly precise.
How so?
Well, a vague adjective might inadvertently activate unintended semantic pathways, sending your output in a direction you never intended.
Oh.
So paradoxically, the richer the LLM's understanding, the more precise your adjectival prompting needs to be.
Okay, that makes sense. More power, more responsibility in choosing words.
Precisely. And another hurdle is that LLMs can actually struggle with fine-grained linguistic annotation. For instance, GPT 3.5's ability to accurately identify adjectives declines as input complexity increases.
So it might not even realize red is an adjective if the sentence is complicated.
It's possible, and if an adjective isn't correctly identified, its intended modifications simply can't be processed. The instruction is just lost.
So it's not just about what the adjective means, but whether the AI even sees it properly to begin with.
Exactly. And then you have polysemy. That's just a fancy word for when a single word, like novel, has multiple meanings.
Like a new idea versus a book.
Precisely. Does novel mean new or a book? LLMs can struggle with this, which is why research into multi-sense embeddings is so important.
Multi-sense embeddings.
Yeah.
What are those, basically?
They're basically ways to teach the AI to understand which specific meaning of a word is intended in a given context,
Helping it pick the right one.
helping it to disambiguate, to pick the right sense. All of this means that how an LLM understands semantics is a layered system. Basic identification is one thing,
Okay.
but rendering nuance is deeper and much more prone to failure. Prompts might actually need to explicitly scaffold disambiguation, kind of giving the LLM more clues to prevent these misunderstandings.
Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone working with more than just text. How do adjectives work in multimodal prompts? Combining text and visual.
That's yes. In multimodal environments, adjectives in the text act as semantic lenses for visual data.
Semantic lenses, like camera filters.
Sort of, yeah. For example, if you prompt, "Give me a list of all the important things in this picture," the adjective important actively directs the LLM's focus, filtering and prioritizing specific elements in the image.
Okay.
Or, for image generation, if you ask for a Victorian-era mansion with intricate gingerbread trim, intricate isn't just descriptive, it's essential for getting those precise visual details.
Without it, you might just get a plain mansion.
Exactly. Their structural role is to impose constraints and guide the LLM's gaze on the image. It involves complex cross-modal mapping, not just modifying abstract concepts. You're literally telling the AI where to look and how to interpret what it sees.
Beyond just understanding, how do adjectives influence what the LLM prioritizes in its output? What actually comes out?
Adjectives significantly impact what information becomes salient, what stands out, and how the LLM prioritizes its output.
How can we know that for sure?
We can actually quantify their influence using prompt saliency methods like masking adjectives, basically hiding them to see how the output changes.
Oh, interesting. Like A/B testing the adjective.
Exactly. Imagine testing concise versus accurate in a summary prompt. Removing one or the other dramatically shifts the AI's focus and the kind of summary you get.
Right.
In structured prompts, adjectives are like high-leverage control knobs.
Little words, big impact.
Yes, but here's the surprising point. Their influence isn't always linear. A minor adjective can sometimes disproportionately alter output if it happens to align with or contradict the LLM's internal biases.
Whoa. So a small word could accidentally trigger a huge bias effect.
It could. This highlights a critical need for saliency-aware adjective selection, maybe even using automated tools to predict their impact before you deploy them.
Like getting a preview of the effect.
Exactly. It's like knowing which dial on your stereo has the biggest effect on the sound, even if it looks small.
Okay, let's shift our perspective then. Let's look at adjectives as actual components within the prompt's infrastructure. Are they stable building blocks, or are they more like, I don't know, unpredictable variables?
That's a great question. The report discusses adjectives as either reusable modules or volatile tokens.
Module versus volatile token.
While modular prompts aim for reusable components, LLMs are incredibly sensitive to phrasing, meaning some adjectives can be quite volatile.
Which ones tend to be volatile?
Think about generic adjectives like good or nice. They're often more volatile because their semantic impact is heavily context-dependent and easily overridden.
They're just too vague.
Too vague, too unpredictable. Conversely, domain-specific, precise, or strategically weighted adjectives, like those given numerical weights in image generation prompts, can be robust, reusable modules.
Like intricate dot 1.3 or something.
Precisely. A crucial concept here is epistemic weight. Adjectives that carry significant, unambiguous information, like urgent in urgent medical report, are less volatile and more modular. They carry weight.
Because urgent has a pretty clear meaning in that context.
Exactly. This suggests the potential for a volatility index for adjectives based on factors like their ambiguity, typical information game, and observed stability across models.
That would be incredibly useful.
It would be an invaluable tool for prompt architects, helping them build more reliable, predictable systems.
So if we're building complex LLM agents, maybe multiple AIs working together, how does adjective usage affect the overall system stability?
In multi-agent systems where different modules interact, inconsistent interpretation of adjectives across those modules can lead to significant instability and error propagation.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine you have one AI module that generates a detailed summary and another module that then processes that summary.
Okay.
If the first module interprets detailed as meaning lengthy analysis, but the second module expects brevity despite detail, maybe just the key points.
I see the problem.
You got a recipe for misaligned outputs and system failure. Ensuring consistent adjectival semantics across all interacting modules is paramount for stability.
Like a shared dictionary for the AIs.
Potentially, yes. Perhaps requiring a shared adjective lexicon with calibrated meanings for critical terms. It's like ensuring everyone in a complex orchestra is playing from the same sheet music.
Got it. Now, what are the actual points of failure related to adjectives? You mentioned instability, but what else? We're talking things like performance drift, maybe even hallucinations.
Absolutely. LLMs are incredibly sensitive to phrasing, making adjectives latent vulnerability points, hidden weaknesses.
Okay.
One issue is performance drift, where an adjective's interpretation subtly changes over time or across different model versions.
So detailed might mean something slightly different in GPT-4 compared to GPT-5.
It could. It's like a word gradually losing its crisp meaning within the model's understanding. Adjectives can also be direct hallucination triggers.
How do they trigger hallucinations?
Especially when they force the fusion of semantically distant concepts. The report uses the example of asking for a quantum banana.
Quantum banana.
That's far more likely to elicit a hallucination than asking for a yellow banana. Why? because quantum pushes the concept of banana way beyond its typical real-world boundaries.
It forces the AI to make something up.
Exactly. The report even notes that adding random adjectives for counterfactual testing can reveal these inconsistencies. It shows that adjectives aren't just passive descriptors, they are active agents that can powerfully perturb the LLM's processing, sometimes in very strange ways.
So we know adjectives can cause problems. What do those problems actually look like in the LLM's output? How would I spot them?
Well, adjective-induced failures aren't always obvious crashes. They can be subtle degradations that you might not notice immediately.
Like what?
If you've ever had an LLM generate purple prose, the overuse of ornate, flowery
I haven't
adjectives,
seen that.
or unnecessary redundant exposition, or even just awkward word choice, adjectives might be the culprit. This verbosity can sometimes be due to biases introduced during the reinforcement learning from human feedback, the RLHF process.
The AI learned to be too wordy.
Sometimes, yes, where the model learns to generate more verbose output because that was preferred during training. Ambiguity is a huge challenge here, too. Adjectives are a significant source of lexical ambiguity, complicating word sense disambiguation for LLMs.
So if it picks the wrong meaning of novel again,
The output will almost certainly be misaligned. LLM-induced distortion of factual content can also be marked by shifts in abstractness or concreteness, often directly modified by adjectives.
interesting.
Even the interpretation of gradable adjectives like tall or expensive is highly context-dependent and sensitive, leading to pragmatic failures if the LLM doesn't grasp the nuance. Is tall for a person the same as tall for a building?
Right, context is everything.
The core issue is often a fundamental misalignment between the prompter's intent and the LLM's interpretation due to biases, pragmatic nuances, or intrinsic ambiguity. And if you overqualify, like asking for a very unique, somewhat traditional, yet surprisingly innovative solution,
That sounds like marketing speak.
it does. But you're creating an overly complex and internally inconsistent semantic space for the LLM. You're pulling it in too many directions, potentially triggering hallucinations right there.
That's so relatable. I can definitely see how that creates a headache for the AI. The report even gives us a typology of these failures, like a classification system. Let's dive into that.
Yes, this typology of adjective-induced prompt failures is really useful. It's a crucial diagnostic tool for anyone trying to troubleshoot their prompts.
Okay, break it down for us.
First, there's padding redundancy. This is where adjectives add word count but little new meaning. Think of a truly very unique and absolutely essential requirement.
Just fluff words.
Exactly. It leads to verbose outputs and reduced conciseness. The AI might ramble.
Okay, what's next?
Next, overqualifying. Using too many adjectives, especially conflicting ones. The report gives an example like, generate a simple yet sophisticated, minimalist but feature-rich design.
That sounds impossible.
Right, it can result in incoherence and even contradictory output. How can something be minimalist and feature-rich in the same way?
Good point.
Then, semantic ambiguity, we touched on this. When an adjective has multiple meanings and the context is unclear, like describe a novel approach.
Did you mean new or a book?
Exactly. The output might reflect an unintended sense of the word, making it totally off topic.
Okay.
Pragmatic ambiguity. This happens when the intended force or implication of an adjective is unclear, like just saying, make the report good.
Good how? Good for who?
Precisely. What does good actually mean in this context? This leads to tonal misalignment or unmet implicit expectations.
Makes sense.
Then, tonal misalignment. This is where adjectives create a tone inconsistent with the desired output. For example, write a very serious and somber children's story.
Yeah. That's not going to work.
The output becomes inappropriate for the audience or purpose. Conceptual distortion. This is a big one for hallucinations. Adjectives creating an illogical or contradictory concept when combined with a noun, like explain the liquid computer's architecture.
Liquid computer.
Exactly. This leads straight to hallucinations or nonsensical output because the concept itself is broken.
Okay, and the last one.
Finally, specificity mismatch. Adjectives that are too general when precision is needed, or maybe too specific when flexibility is intended. Think, analyze some data.
Vague.
Versus describe a 1973 Ford Pinto with exactly 3 rust spots.
Maybe too specific unless you really need that.
Right. This results in either vague or overly narrow output, depending on the mismatch with what you actually needed.
This whole report takes a failure-aware approach,
Yeah.
which is so valuable. How do these failures play out in longer multi-stage AI pipelines as it get worse?
It can, yes. This is where semantic drift becomes a significant issue, particularly with comparative and evaluative adjectives.
Semantic drift. The meaning changes over time or steps.
Exactly. LLM-assisted revisions, for instance, can subtly alter writing styles, maybe reducing adjectives for neutrality, which shows how meaning can shift across phases. What's particularly concerning here, the report notes, is that LLMs can sometimes misinterpret subjective phrases like witty,
Okay.
leading, in extreme cases cited, to genuinely harassing output.
Wow, that's a huge leap.
It's a severe form of drift from intent to outcome. Evaluative adjectives like promising approach can also become semantic amplifiers.
Amplifiers, they get stronger.
They can exaggerate meaning across phases. A promising approach in step 1 might morph into a revolutionary, groundbreaking solution by step 3. This highlights a fundamental lack of stable semantic calibration across the AI's internal processes.
So if I'm understanding that right, it's like the meaning of promising gets put through a magnifying glass by the AI, and by the time it reaches the next stage, it's exaggerated into revolutionary. That's a huge issue for system reliability.
Precisely. And it gets even trickier with comparative adjectives like better or faster. These are prone to what the report calls reference frame decay.
Reference frame decay, meaning
It means the original context or baseline for a comparison gets lost as information moves through different AI modules or stages.
can you give an example?
Sure. If you initially prompt Model A is faster than Model B for this specific coding task, that specific context might drift.
Okay.
It could become simply Model A demonstrates superior speed, and then eventually, across multiple processing steps, morph into the much broader claim, Model A is the fastest model available on the market generally.
Which is probably not true and definitely wasn't what you said originally.
Exactly. To counteract this, prompts and handoffs in multi-phase systems must meticulously manage and transmit contextual anchors for comparative and evaluative language. You have to keep reminding the system what you're comparing against.
Going back to hallucinations, which seem like a major failure point, what specific role do adjectives play in triggering them?
Adjectives are often instrumental in defining concepts that trigger hallucinations through what the report calls conceptual overreach.
Conceptual overreach, pushing things too far.
Yes. This happens when an adjective pushes a concept beyond its typical semantic boundaries or forces unnatural, illogical combinations.
Like the quantum banana again.
Or prompts like, describe the melancholy of a prime number.
Melancholy prime number.
Yeah, okay. Or explain the aerodynamic properties of a feeling. These phrases force the LLM to bridge vast, illogical semantic distances. It has no real-world data for this, so it has to fabricate or generate nonsensical details just to fulfill the prompt.
It's trying its best, but the input is impossible.
Pretty much. This understanding suggests developing something like a hallucination susceptibility score for specific adjective-noun pairings.
A score based on how weird the combination is.
Based on their semantic distance or typical co-occurrence, yes. This allows for a more proactive stance in prompt engineering, helping you identify and manage high-risk adjectival constructions before they lead to bizarre outputs. So if adjectives are this powerful and potentially problematic, how do we engineer them precisely? How do we get the results we want without these failures?
Well, a key insight emerges when we look at the typological drift in adjective usage across different domains. How people use them changes depending on the job.
Okay, how so?
In marketing and creative prompts, for example, you see hyperbolic, evocative, descriptive adjectives. Think. A Victorian-era mansion with intricate gingerbread trim surrounded by misty forest at twilight.
Setting a mood, painting a picture.
Exactly. Or lots of superlatives like highest quality, extremely detailed. These are designed for evocation and persuasion.
Right.
In stark contrast, analytical and technical prompts use precise, quantitative, constraint-setting adjectives like summarize monthly sales performance, highlight any region where sales dropped by more than 15%.
Very specific. Factual.
Yes. Here, adjectives offer specification and constraint. This shift from early prompt crafting, which often felt like, magical incantations.
She's throwing words hoping something works. Right. To a more deliberate adjectival economy is key to avoiding issues like purple prose and improving overall accuracy, using the right adjective for the job.
So if adjectives can be tired and dilute precision, you mentioned good, nice, interesting, how can we structurally control their use, especially in critical systems where vagueness is dangerous?
Yeah, tired adjectives, those cliched, overused, or vague terms, can absolutely dilute prompt precision. To address this, especially in system-critical prompts, the report suggests several structural controls.
Okay, like what kind of controls?
First, imagine adjective whitelists, blacklists. This means curating specific lists of adjectives you want the AI to use for a certain task or ones you absolutely want it to avoid.
So for legal documents, maybe blacklist nice, but whitelist binding.
Exactly. Imagine a legal firm wanting to whitelist precise legal terms while blacklisting vague qualifiers to ensure ironclad accuracy.
Makes sense.
Ah.
What else?
Then there are semantic density filters. These would be automated tools designed to flag adjectives that are adding minimal information, essentially just padding your prompt without adding real semantic value.
Catching the fluff automatically.
Right. And you could have specificity nudging interfaces, prompting interfaces that detect vague adjectives like interesting and suggest more specific synonyms or ask you to rephrase.
The UI helps you be more precise.
Yes. Or even automated adjective suggestion replacement, where LLM-assisted tools suggest contextually appropriate alternatives. Style conformance checkers could identify overused or weak adjectives based on predefined style guides. The report also mentions attention-weighted pruning adaptation.
Whoa, slow down. Attention-weighted what?
Yeah. Basically, automatically flagging adjectives that the model's own attention mechanism isn't focusing on much, suggesting they might be removable.
If the AI itself isn't paying attention to the word, maybe it's not needed.
That's the idea. And finally, extending GenAI guardrails to include stylistic checks for weak adjectival choices.
So guardrails not just for harmful content, but for bad writing style too.
Potentially, yes. More broadly, this moves us towards style-aware prompt architectures, where adjective choice is dynamically guided by your desired output characteristics. The goal is to make sure every adjective earns its place.
Okay, let's talk about the LLM's internal processing. How do adjectives impact its attention, what it focuses on, and also how easy is it for us humans to understand and trust what the AI puts out based on these words?
Right, well, adjectives significantly shift how the model allocates its internal attention and manages its token budget.
Token budget being how much processing power or context window it has.
Exactly. Attention mechanisms assign weights to tokens, but sometimes non-semantic tokens like articles, or even, say, formatting like new line characters, can receive disproportionately high attention.
Really, the can get a lot of attention.
It can, depending on the model and context. This dilutes focus from critical semantic components, and this directly impacts token budgets, which is crucial for efficient processes like chain-of-thought reasoning, reducing unnecessary tokens.
Including fluffy adjectives.
Including redundant adjectives or superfluous intensifiers like very, improves efficiency and reduces computational costs. Think about very happy versus just ecstatic, or red, crimson, scarlet apple.
Using one strong word instead of three weaker ones.
Exactly. While these might seem harmless, words like very or repeated synonyms can act like non-semantic tokens, absorbing attention without proportional semantic value. This wasted attention impacts efficiency and cost.
So there's an attention economy inside the LLM.
That's a great way to put it. The attention economy is a finite resource. Overuse of low-impact adjectives leads to an attention deficit for critical semantic components, potentially degrading reasoning. This suggests the need for an adjective attention audit to ensure every adjective justifies its inclusion.
That's a really helpful way to think about it, an attention economy. And what about interpretive friction? For us, the humans, and even for the AI itself, what's that?
Interpretive friction basically arises from a fundamental misalignment in understanding between the prompter, the AI, and maybe even a human reviewer.
Okay.
For LLMs, they can misinterpret subjective language, often adjectives. They struggle to map subjective terms like enthusiastic to precise operational semantics. This is how you might get those situations we mentioned where enthusiastic could be misinterpreted, potentially leading to outputs perceived as, say, harassing.
Because the AI doesn't grasp the social nuance of enthusiastic.
It might not. Ambiguous adjectives also hinder word sense disambiguation, making it harder for the AI to know what you mean.
And for humans trying to check the AI's work.
For human auditors, friction is worse when LLM outputs aren't faithful to the original reasoning or contain ambiguous, florid, or misleading adjectival language. It just makes it harder to understand what the AI did and why. This undermines trust and makes oversight incredibly difficult.
So the AI is effectively generating outputs that are hard for us to trust because of how it's using these words.
Precisely. Especially evaluative and abstract adjectives, terms like fair, significant, or complex. These are potent sources of this friction.
Why those specifically?
For an LLM, they often lack precise operational semantics. What does fair mean mathematically? For humans reviewing the output, such terms without clear grounding make verification really difficult. It increases audit time and erodes trust.
And this can lead to a feedback loop problem.
Yes, the report calls it a semantic uncertainty loop. The AI uses an ambiguous adjective, the human misinterprets it, the human provides misaligned feedback based on that misunderstanding, and the AI processes that flawed input, leading to further divergence.
Yikes. How does that start?
Imagine being told by an AI system the proposed system is stable. Does stable mean robust against attacks, consistent in performance, or simply unchanging over time? That initial adjectival ambiguity can spiral.
So we need clearer language between humans and AI.
This highlights the crucial need for mutually intelligible adjectives in high-stakes human-AI interactions. Maybe even requiring a negotiated lexicon or AI systems that proactively ask for clarification when they encounter ambiguous adjectives from the user.
Now, you mentioned domain differences earlier. It's not just about what an adjective means, but how it's used in different communities and cultures. Let's explore these adjective topographies, as the report calls them.
Right. A key insight emerges when we look at how different user communities develop distinct adjectival dialects. They use adjectives differently depending on their goals.
Can you give examples?
Sure. AI image generation prompts, as we discussed, use rich, precise, descriptive adjectives for realism or style. Hyper-realistic rendering, vivid colors in the style of Art Nouveau, misty forest at twilight, they're creating specific aesthetic outputs.
Okay, visual and stylistic.
Academic prompts, however, use adjectives for analytical depth or formality. A critical review, a formal abstract, a gamified lesson plan. Very different function.
Analytical structural.
The very existence of specialized prompt libraries for art, business, legal tasks, etc., confirms this domain-specific differentiation. Think about SEO prompts using high-ranking article or authoritative content.
Right, specific SEO jargon.
Versus visual arts prompts with surreal landscape or ethereal lighting. Academic and research prompts feature rigorous analysis or empirical evidence, while legal prompts might use unambiguous contract language.
So each field develops its own effective adjective vocabulary.
Exactly. Analyzing these trends over time can reveal evolving epistemic frameworks, how people in those fields think and communicate, and inform the development of better domain-specific LLMs.
That's fascinating. So it's almost like knowing the local dialect of adjectives for your field. What about those high-value prompts you see on marketplaces like Prompt Hero? What do they tell us about how people are really trying to get LLMs to perform when money's involved?
Yeah, an examination of high-value prompts on those marketplaces reveals distinct, often very specific patterns.
Like what stands out?
There's a frequent use of superlative adjectives. Highest quality, extremely detailed, most realistic, and strongly positive evaluative adjectives like gorgeous, stunning, perfect body.
Now people really pushing for the absolute best or what they perceive as best.
Exactly. A very common pattern is adjective stacking. Multiple synonymous superlatives piled up, like highest quality, masterpiece, ultra-high resolution, extremely detailed.
Does that actually work better, or do people just think it does?
That's the million-dollar question. Aspirational adjectives like masterpiece are also common. It suggests users perceive these as correlating with higher quality outputs, or maybe they've simply become conventional signals, learned tricks for getting the model into a certain mode.
Like cargo cult prompting?
Could be. The prevalence of specific strings like 8K, raw photo, highest quality masterpiece, ultra-high resolution, photorealistic, may be what the report calls magic incantations.
Magic incantations.
Well, they might be reverse-engineered keys that unlock desirable output modes, possibly exploiting system quirks or undocumented features of the model. This has significant implications for interpretability and stability as models evolve, because these magic words might stop working with the next update.
Okay, beyond domains and marketplaces, what about culture? Do our cultural biases show up in how we use adjectives and prompts? And how does that affect what the LLM generates?
Yes, absolutely. This is a critical point. LLM training data inevitably contains cultural biases, meaning direct translation of prompts is often insufficient.
Can you give an example?
Well, the report notes that outputs generated in German can show different underlying biases than those generated in English from the same base model. LLMs can also embody a kind of default persona bias, perhaps leaning towards, say, a middle-aged Caucasian male from a Western cultural context, because that's overrepresented in the training data.
Okay.
Adjectives encoding specific cultural values, think about Western emphasis on superlatives versus, say, Japanese cultural markers of modesty, can significantly skew the output tone.
So the same prompt translated might produce very different feeling results.
Definitely. An LLM trained primarily on English data might misinterpret or amplify superlatives when processing a translated prompt from a culture that uses them sparingly. Conversely, it might completely miss subtle negative evaluation hidden in understated phrasing from another culture.
That sounds like a huge challenge for global AI systems.
It is. Mitigation requires developing things like cultural adjectival lexicons that map adjectives by their pragmatic force and cultural connotation across languages.
So the AI can choose culturally appropriate words.
Exactly. This would allow LLM fine-tuning or prompting to select culturally appropriate equivalents, which is crucial for building truly equitable LLM systems and avoiding what some might call linguistic imperialism, where one culture's way of speaking dominates.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful about the problems and nuances. So what tools and frameworks can we actually use to get better at this? How do we engineer adjectives effectively?
The report introduces some highly practical tools, starting with a failure-informed prompt chart. This basically identifies common tasks and shows where adjective overuse or misuse typically degrades the output.
Like a diagnostic guide.
Exactly. For creative writing, for instance, the chart notes overuse leads to purple prose and a loss of impact. Think, describe the incredibly beautiful, stunningly gorgeous, wonderfully radiant sunset.
Too much.
The recommendation is to use strong verbs and concrete nouns, with just a judicious few carefully chosen evocative adjectives.
Okay, what about something technical?
In technical summaries, excessive adjectives cause semantic bloat and reduced clarity, like provide a very detailed, extremely comprehensive, totally exhaustive summary of the complex algorithm.
Again, overkill.
Right. Here, conciseness and precise technical adjectives are key. Focus on the specifics that matter.
And for something like code?
For code generation, overspecification of non-essential style like generate Python code that is exceptionally elegant, remarkably clever, can lead to unnecessary constraints or just waste tokens.
Focus on function, not flowery descriptions of the code.
Exactly. The focus should be on functional requirements. Adjectives like efficient, readable, secure. The chart covers other areas too, like marketing copy and legal documents, showing similar patterns, precision over padding, clarity over clutter.
That's incredibly useful. This chart is great for diagnosing problems after the fact. What about a framework for intentionally tuning our adjective use beforehand?
Yes, this is where a prompt template typology for tuning adjective use by function comes in. It helps us think about the different jobs adjectives do in a prompt.
Different functions, like what?
Well, an adjective can act as a clarifier, defining scope or audience. For instance, explain topic for a beginner audience. Beginner clarifies the necessary level.
Okay, so that's the context.
Or as a tone setter, establishing the desired emotional or stylistic quality. Think, draft a response that is formal and empathetic.
Controlling the vibe.
Precisely. It can be a constraint setter or limiter, imposing specific boundaries, like identify all items that are greater than value, ensuring precise filtering.
Setting rules.
It can be a specificity enhancer, adding concrete details to reduce vagueness. For example, describe a red brick 19th century solar-powered noun, leading to more vivid, specific output.
Adding detail.
In creative or visual prompts, it can be an evocative detailer, focusing on visual or sensory qualities, like generate an image of a landscape with misty, serene lighting.
Painting that picture again.
An evaluative modifier expresses judgment or comparison, like provide an analysis of the positive aspects of topic.
Giving an opinion or focus.
And finally, as we've discussed, an adjective can be a potential distractor ambiguity source if it's inherently vague or polysemous, like find information about the interesting project. That's a function you want to avoid.
Right, so thinking about the job the adjective is supposed to do.
Exactly. This typology provides a structured framework for engineered application of adjectives, not just throwing them in incidentally.
And finally, you mentioned a scorecard to help us pick the right kind of adjective for the job. This feels like a cheat sheet for better prompts.
It absolutely is intended as a helpful heuristic. The report proposes a scorecard that ranks different types of adjectives based on how stable their meaning tends to be, how easy they are for humans and AI to interpret consistently, and how likely they are to trigger hallucinations.
Okay, give us some highlights from the scorecard. What's good, what's risky?
Well, common descriptive, concrete adjectives, things like red, large, wooden, generally have high stability and interpretability and a low likelihood of hallucination. They're recommended for factual descriptions.
Safe bets for facts.
Precise technical domain-specific adjectives like isentropic, Boolean, macroeconomic are highly stable within their specific field with low hallucination risk. Excellent for specialized tasks where precision is paramount.
Good for experts talking to the AI.
Quantitative adjectives, numbers basically like 3, 25%, 10 foot, also show high stability and low hallucination risk. Perfect for setting clear, measurable constraints.
Okay, those seem reliable. What about the risky ones?
Superlative intensifier adjectives like best, very, extremely have medium-low stability. They can encourage exaggeration or even fabrication in the AI's output, making them risky for purely analytical tasks. Use sparingly?
The hike words?
Exactly. Evaluative subjective adjectives like good, beautiful, important have low stability and low interpretability for both humans and AI, with a medium-high hallucination likelihood. Use these with extreme caution in factual contexts because their meaning is so subjective.
Be careful with opinions.
Abstract conceptual adjectives such as strategic, innovative, complex have medium-low stability and medium-high hallucination risk. They're often best paired with concrete examples to ground their meaning. Don't just say innovative, explain how.
Ground the abstract ideas.
And finally, figurative metaphorical adjectives like a fiery debate or a stone-cold stare have low stability and a high hallucination risk if the AI takes them literally. Generally risky for literal tasks.
Unless you specifically want creative metaphorical language.
Precisely. This scorecard provides a valuable heuristic, a robust starting point for prompt engineers to select adjectives that are more likely to yield stable, interpretable, and reliable LM outputs.
This is amazing, but where do we go from here? What are the cutting-edge ideas in this field for prompt engineering with adjectives? What's next?
The report outlines several intriguing meta-prompt upgrades that really push the boundaries. Things that build on everything we've discussed.
Meta-prompt upgrades. Sounds cool, like what?
One is failure-informed prompt inversion. This isn't just about fixing a prompt when it goes wrong. It's about systematically turning that observed failure into a targeted research prompt.
Using failures to learn more systematically.
Exactly. For example, if you observe that vague evaluative adjectives cause hallucinations in creative writing prompts, you could then systematically compare prompts using intriguing versus prompts using perilous to precisely study how they affect occurrence and hallucination rates under controlled conditions.
Turning debugging into experiments.
Yes. This approach is crucial for sensitive domains like health policy, where comparative adjectives could unintentionally distort priorities. It effectively transforms debugging into systematic research on prompt design.
Okay, that's smart. What else?
Another fascinating upgrade is the linguistic stack as UX modifier. Imagine user interfaces for prompt generation that use dynamic controls instead of just letting you type free-form text.
Like buttons and sliders for adjectives.
Kind of. You could have intensity sliders for an adjective like important, allowing you to visually adjust from somewhat important to critically important with the underlying prompt text updating in real time.
Okay, I like that.
Or specificity selectors with drop-down menus for a term like report, offering choices like brief summary or detailed analysis or executive overview, which then injects the right adjectives. And maybe tone palettes where you click on formal or epithetic or humorous to inject appropriate tonal modifiers.
So we could basically be building prompts with sliders and dials instead of just typing. That feels like a huge leap forward for making this accessible.
Absolutely. It makes sophisticated prompt engineering much more accessible and allows for finer-grained control and easier A/B testing of different adjectival strategies.
Very cool. Any other meta upgrades?
Yes, one more, the reflexive drift tracker. This involves using a dynamic prompt archetype specifically designed to monitor how adjective choice affects the AI's behavior and interpretation across iterative interactions or multi-turn dialogues.
Tracking how meaning changes over a conversation.
Exactly. It's like setting up an iterative prompt echo cycle that tracks how an adjective's meaning drifts or gets misinterpreted over time by the AI.
How would that work?
It could quantify things like semantic stability and interpretive robustness, helping identify which adjectives consistently maintain their intended meaning versus those that tend to lead to semantic divergence as a conversation progresses.
That sounds vital for chatbots or agents.
It would be crucial for reliable conversational AI and multi-step agents. It could potentially even inform self-correcting prompt systems that detect and mitigate semantic drift in real time.
Wow, that was a truly deep dive into a surprisingly complex topic. Who knew that adjectives, those words we barely think about sometimes, are so critical to how AI understands and responds to us?
Indeed. And based on everything in this report, several core architectural principles for engineering adjectives really emerge.
Okay, let's recap the big takeaways.
1. Specificity and clarity. Always avoid vague or ambiguous adjectives whenever possible. Be precise.
Got it.
2. Functional targeting. Choose adjectives based on their specific communicative goal. What job do you need that word to do? Clarify, set tone, constrain.
Know the function.
3. Contextual appropriateness. Recognize that an adjective's effectiveness depends heavily on the domain, the task, the audience, and even cultural norms.
Context matters.
4. Attention and token economy. Be mindful that adjectives consume attentional resources and token budgets. Justify their use by their actual semantic contribution. Avoid unnecessary padding.
Make every word count.
5. Bias awareness. Be reflective about the cultural and training data biases that adjectives can carry and amplify, especially when working across languages or cultures.
Watch for hidden biases.
And 6. Modularity and stability. Prioritize adjectives with stable, predictable semantic contributions, especially when building reusable prompts or complex multi-agent systems.
Aim for reliable building blocks. What stands out to you, our listener, after hearing all this? Maybe it's how much thought goes into crafting those magic incantations for image generation, or perhaps the subtle ways an adjective can cause an LLM to hallucinate or drift off course.
The ultimate goal here, I think, isn't to eliminate adjectives entirely. They add richness and precision when used well. The goal is to engineer their use with the same rigor applied to other critical system components.
Treat them like code components almost.
In a way, yes. This ensures they consistently enhance, rather than degrade, meaning and the quality of human-AI interaction. The pursuit of truly globally equitable and effective LLM systems, as the report concludes, really hinges on understanding and leveraging these small but mighty words.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and maybe, just maybe, start paying a little more attention to the adjectives in your prompts.